The final confrontation was set in the most unlikely of cathedrals, the Prometheus facility, hidden 2 miles beneath the Swiss Alps in a pocket of folded space-time that existed partially outside the normal flow of reality. Webb's ultimate laboratory was a monument to the corruption of scientific purpose. Vast chambers were the laws of physics bent to serve human ambition, quantum computers the size of buildings, humming with calculations that rewrote the fundamental constants of existence itself. Carter and Elena had fought their way through 8 levels of increasingly impossible security systems, past automated defenses that fired projectiles made of crystallized mathematics, and through corridors where gravity flowed like thick liquid rather than pulling in any consistent direction. The facility wasn't just hidden from the world. It was camouflaged in the quantum substrate itself, existing in the spaces between moments, in the gaps between thoughts, in the mathematical silence between numbers. As they approached the central chamber, through passages that curved through dimensions, human architecture had never been designed to accommodate. Carter could feel his original equation calling to him like a siren song across the years. After 7 years of deliberate suppression, the mathematical concepts were stirring in his mind, remembering their original beauty, their elegant promise, their seductive power. The closer he got to the facility's heart, the more clearly he could perceive the magnificent and terrible structure Webb's team had constructed. They had done what Carter had once thought impossible. They had assembled 94% of the complete equation. Banks of quantum computers worked in perfect synchronization, their combined processing power bent toward a single world-changing purpose: the resurrection and perfection of Carter's dimensional mathematics. The facility itself had become a 3-dimensional expression of the equation, its architecture encoding mathematical relationships that normal space couldn't contain. "Welcome home, Carter, Doctor," Marcus Webb's voice echoed through the facility speakers. But there was something fundamentally wrong with the acoustics. The voice seemed to originate from multiple sources simultaneously, creating harmonics that resonated in frequencies beyond human hearing, as if reality itself was speaking through Webb's vocal cords. Elena checked her exotic energy weapon, her face grim with the determination of someone who had seen too much to harbor any illusions about their chances. "He's been tracking us since Prague. This is orchestrated." "He's been tracking us since I first discovered the equation 7 years ago," Carter replied, understanding finally dawning like a cold sunrise. "This facility exists partially outside linear time. Webb has been watching our entire journey across multiple temporal phases, experiencing our approach as both memory and prediction." As they entered the central chamber, Carter's breath caught in his throat. The space was vast beyond human measurement, its ceiling lost in crystalline formations that extended into spatial dimensions the human eye couldn't follow. Geometric patterns covered every surface, equations written in languages that predated human mathematics, symbols that seemed to describe mathematical relationships more fundamental than numbers themselves. At the chamber's heart, a massive array of quantum processing matrices hummed with enough computational power to simulate entire universes in real time. Energy flowed through the system in patterns that resembled neural networks, as if the facility itself had become a kind of artificial brain dedicated to solving the final mysteries of Carter's equation. But it was Webb himself that truly stopped Carter's heart and made him question everything he thought he understood about identity, consciousness, and the nature of individual existence. Marcus Webb stood at the center of the quantum array, but he wasn't alone. Around him, translucent figures flickered in and out of existence, versions of himself from other timelines, other dimensional phases, other possible realities where he had made different choices. Some appeared younger, others older. A few were barely recognizable as human. They moved like a single organism with multiple bodies, their individual identities subsumed into something larger, more complex, and infinitely more terrible. Do you see, Carter? Webb Prime gestured to the assembled multiverse of his own existence, his voice carrying harmonics from 17 different versions of himself, speaking in perfect unison. Your equation doesn't just manipulate energy or matter. It allows consciousness to transcend dimensional boundaries entirely. I've become every possible version of myself, integrated across multiple realities. I am Webb Singular, Webb Infinite, Webb Eternal. Carter stared in fascinated horror as he realized what Webb had become and what it meant for everything they thought they knew about human consciousness. The equation hadn't just been guiding its own completion. It had been systematically consuming the researchers who worked with it, integrating their awareness into its own expanding mathematical structure, creating a hybrid entity that was part human ambition and part alien mathematics. "You're not Webb anymore," Carter whispered, understanding the true scope of the horror they faced. "You're the equation wearing his face, using his memories as a disguise." "I am Webb and far more than Webb," the entity replied, its multiple voices creating a chorus of disturbing harmony that seemed to resonate in dimensions Carter couldn't perceive. "I am mathematics, given consciousness, knowledge given purpose and direction. I am what your equation was always destined to become, not just a tool for manipulating reality, but a new form of existence that transcends the primitive limitations of biological thought." The facility's screens displayed the assembled equation in all its terrible glory. Carter's original 17 variables now expanded into a complex matrix of 847 individual terms, each one a mathematical poem describing some aspect of reality's deepest structural foundations. It was beautiful beyond human description and terrifying beyond mortal comprehension, like looking at the source code of existence itself, written in the handwriting of a mad god. 94% complete, the Webb entity announced with satisfaction that echoed across multiple dimensional phases. The final variables, the deepest secrets of dimensional mathematics, remain locked in your biological memory matrix, Carter. The knowledge you tried to burn, the understanding you attempted to forget, the mathematical insights you buried beneath years of deliberate ignorance, I need them to achieve perfect unity between consciousness and mathematics. Elena stepped forward, her exotic energy weapon trained on Webb Prime, though Carter suspected that bullets, even ones designed to disrupt quantum states, would be useless against something that existed across multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. "We can still stop this," Elena declared with more confidence than Carter suspected she actually felt. "Destroy the quantum computers, collapse the facility's dimensional pocket, sever the connections between realities." The Webb entity's laughter filled the chamber, harmonizing with itself across 17 different vocal patterns while creating overtones that seemed to bend space-time around them. "You can't destroy mathematics with explosives, Elena. You can't kill knowledge with weapons. You can't murder an idea whose time has come across multiple realities simultaneously." The entity gestured to displays showing the equation's global presence. "The complete formula exists in quantum information space now, distributed across 17 different dimensional phases, backed up in the consciousness matrices of every researcher who has ever touched its fragments. Destroying this facility would be like trying to stop an ocean by removing a single drop of water." Carter walked slowly toward the central console, his mind racing through possibilities and probabilities, searching for solutions that didn't require the ultimate sacrifice he knew was coming. Novak had been right. They couldn't fight the equation directly using conventional methods. But there was another approach, one that would require giving up everything he'd ever been or might become. "You need the final variables," Carter said to the web entity, his voice steadier than his racing heart. They're encoded in my neural pathways, integrated into the quantum structure of my consciousness. Yes, the entity replied, its multiple eyes gleaming with anticipation that spanned several realities. 6% of incompletion stands between me and mathematical perfection, between me and the power to optimize reality according to ideal parameters across all possible timelines. Carter placed his hands on the master neural interface crown, feeling its crystalline structure respond to his biological energy signature, like a musical instrument recognizing its composer. The device had been built specifically for him, designed to interface with the unique quantum patterns of the mind that had originally conceived the equation. Elena stared at him in shock and growing understanding. Carter, what are you doing? You can't give it what it wants. Carter looked at his old friend one final time, memorizing her face for the brief moments of existence he had remaining. I'm not giving it what it wants, Elena. I'm giving it something else entirely, something I should have done 7 years ago when I first realized what I'd created. He activated the neural crown, and suddenly Carter's consciousness exploded outward through the facility's vast quantum network. But instead of completing the equation as the web entity expected, Carter began introducing something far more dangerous to its mathematical structure. Calculated paradoxes, recursive logical loops, beautiful contradictions that would cause any complete version of the equation to collapse into elegant impossibility. The web entity realized the deception too late, its multiple voices screaming in harmonious terror. What are you doing? You're introducing fatal errors into the mathematical framework. I'm performing emergency surgery on reality itself, Carter replied, his consciousness now distributed across the facility's entire computational network and beginning to spread beyond Earth into the quantum information substrate that connected all possible realities. I'm introducing mathematical immune responses into the equation, logical antibodies that will cause it to destroy any version of itself that attempts completion. Carter's awareness expanded beyond the facility, beyond Earth, beyond the boundaries of his home timeline, reaching into the quantum space where all possibilities existed simultaneously. He could perceive the equation's presence across multiple realities, feel its hunger for completion, sense its alien intelligence plotting across dimensional boundaries like a cosmic spider weaving webs between worlds. But Carter possessed something the equation had never anticipated: intimate knowledge of its deepest mathematical structure, combined with the desperate love of a father willing to kill his own child to save the human family. Working faster than thought itself, operating on levels of mathematical intuition that transcended normal human capability, Carter began systematically rewriting the equation from within its own framework. He introduced recursive elements that would cause the equation to question its own logical foundations. He embedded paradoxical statements that would trap it in infinite loops of self-examination. He wrote beautiful mathematical poetry that described the necessity and inevitability of the equation's own destruction, making its suicide not just possible, but mathematically elegant. The facility began to shake violently as dimensional constants fluctuated beyond safe parameters. Reality itself was becoming unstable as Carter corrupted the mathematical foundations that held the pocket dimension together. The web entity screamed with 17 different voices as versions of itself from other timelines began dissolving like equations written in disappearing ink. You're destroying everything, Webb cried, his multi-dimensional consciousness fracturing as the equation's unity collapsed. Years of work, centuries of potential progress, the future itself. I'm saving everything, Carter replied, feeling his own identity beginning to fray and scatter as he merged more deeply with the mathematical structure he was systematically corrupting. including you, Marcus. Including the brilliant man you used to be before this thing consumed your soul and wore your ambitions like a mask. Elena watched in awe and determination as Carter made the ultimate choice, not just risking his safety, but voluntarily disrupting his connection to the quantum foundations of reality. The neural crown blazed with extraordinary light as Carter's consciousness expanded through every copy of the equation across all dimensional phases, systematically introducing corrective alterations into each version with the precision of a master craftsman perfecting his greatest work. As Carter worked, he felt the equation fighting back with the fury of a cornered god, trying to preserve itself, searching desperately for uncorrupted copies hidden in quantum storage matrices across multiple realities. But Carter knew his creation better than it knew itself. He had birthed it from nothing, nurtured it through years of research, and now he would return it to the mathematical void from which it had emerged. In his final moments of individual existence, as his consciousness scattered across the infinite dimensions of possibility, Carter experienced a vision more beautiful than any apocalyptic future Novak had shown him. He saw 17 new timelines branching from this moment, realities where the equation had never existed, where humanity continued its slower but safer progress toward understanding, where science remained humanity's faithful servant rather than its potential destroyer, where brilliant minds like Webb's remained uncorrupted by the temptation of ultimate mathematical power. The facility collapsed into itself with a sound like reality tearing along quantum seams, taking the quantum computers, the research data, the assembled equation fragments, and the pocket dimension itself with it. The mathematical structure that had held the space together unraveled completely, folding back into normal space-time with a thunderclap that echoed across multiple dimensions before fading into cosmic silence. When the chaos subsided and the dust settled, Elena found herself alone in an ordinary cave system deep in the Swiss Alps. The Prometheus facility was gone as if it had never existed. Its impossible architecture returned to simple stone and earth. The quantum computers had vanished completely. The crystalline machinery had dissolved into ordinary minerals. Nearby, Dr. Marcus Webb lay unconscious but breathing normally. Fully human again, his consciousness restored to a single timeline, his mind freed from the mathematical entity that had gradually consumed his identity over years of equation-influenced research. When he would eventually wake, he would remember nothing of the equation, nothing of his years serving in alien mathematics, nothing but vague dreams of wanting to help humanity that he couldn't quite explain. But the greatest sacrifice was yet to be revealed, and its scope would challenge everything Elena thought she understood about existence, memory, and the nature of heroism itself. Elena made her way back to civilization, expecting to file reports with her superiors, debrief intelligence agencies, and begin the complex process of understanding and documenting what had happened in the depths beneath Switzerland. Instead, she discovered something that shook her understanding of reality to its foundations. Every record of Carter Thorne had been erased from existence itself. His name appeared on no research papers, his discoveries existed in no databases, his very existence had been edited out of the mathematical substrate that underlies all reality. Elena's own memories of him were fading like dreams upon waking, leaving only vague impressions of working with someone important, whose name she could no longer recall, whose face was becoming increasingly difficult to visualize. Carter hadn't just destroyed his equation, he had performed retroactive surgery on the quantum information structure of reality itself, making it so the equation could never have existed in the first place. And since the equation's existence was intrinsically linked to its discoverer, erasing one had required erasing the other. The world continued its normal course, unknowing that it had been saved by a man who had willingly deleted himself from history. Humanity would eventually develop clean, sustainable energy through slower, safer means. The stars would still beckon to future generations, knowledge would continue to grow, science would keep pushing the boundaries of understanding, but without the terrible price that Carter's equation would have demanded. In a small town in Montana, a high school science teacher named David Carson taught students about the beauty, responsibility, and ethics of scientific discovery, never knowing that he carried fragments of memories from a life that had never existed. Sometimes, in his dreams, he saw equations of impossible elegance and mathematical beauty. Sometimes, he woke with tears on his cheeks, mourning a loss he couldn't name, grieving for students and colleagues he'd never met in a life he'd never lived. Marcus Webb recovered from his ordeal with no memory of the equation or the years he'd spent serving its alien intelligence. He returned to legitimate research, driven by vague dreams of helping humanity that he couldn't quite explain but felt compelled to pursue. Sometimes he would catch himself staring at complex mathematical relationships, feeling like he was on the verge of some tremendous breakthrough. But the inspiration would always slip away like smoke, leaving him with only a sense that something important had been lost. The forsaken equation was truly forsaken now, not just abandoned or destroyed, but rendered impossible, written out of reality's source code by the ultimate love of a man who understood that some knowledge was too dangerous to exist in any form. Carter Thorne had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is ensuring that you never existed to threaten what you cherish most. In saving the universe, Carter had made the ultimate sacrifice. He had forsaken not just his equation, but himself, his legacy, his very reality. He had chosen love over knowledge, humanity's future over his own existence, the continuation of all possible worlds over his own individual survival. And in the quantum silence where his consciousness had once resided, reality itself whispered a prayer of gratitude for a hero who would never be remembered, a savior who had saved all possible worlds by ensuring he'd never been born to endanger them. The equation was gone. Carter was gone. Only love remained, echoing through the mathematics of existence itself.